Hey, this is Jack, and welcome to this YouTube live session. If you're here in real time, thanks for being here. If you're watching after the event, thank you also for being here. It's been a little while since I've been live, and I'm actually back. I'm just using the YouTube native platform. Often I go live using StreamYard, so we'll see how we go with this. I'm going to talk a little bit here about some of the challenges of being more authentic, one of the things that I talk about a lot, and I will be taking some questions. And I also want to let you know, in case you don't, that I have a special running this Labor Day weekend on my live group program. I will tell you a little bit more about that. But if you haven't heard about it, it means you're not on my email list. And if that's true, I would love to have you on my email list. And you can just go to jackbutler.com. I'm just adding that in the chat. And on the main page there, you can sign up for my email list. So if you're here live, let's find out who's here. Say hello. Let me know where you're tuning in from, and let me know what's going on. What are you working on? What's good? What's bad? What's up? What might I be able to help with? And as I said, we'll be getting into a little Q&A here later. So I'll tend to get to those in the order that they come in. So get your questions in. Hi, Vixen. Great to see you too. You're coming in from Minneapolis, right on. And hello from East Lansing. Oh gosh, I'm so bad with I'm like, that's Michigan, right? That's Michigan. Sometimes I look at MI and I think, Mississippi, but I think that would be MS. I think I haven't been to East Lansing. So yes, it's Jessica. Kimberly, good morning as well. Keep the comments rolling in. So I wanted to just start by talking a little bit, and this does actually relate to my group program, because the focus of my group program is helping you transform into the you that you really are, right? So how do we be more of ourselves? Often that is a letting go and taking off process as much as it is an adding on process. What I mean by that is, and we often talk about this using the metaphor of clothing, that all of us move in the world with social personas. They're a necessary part of being human. They let us navigate reality, let us navigate other people, work, relationship, the whole sort of enchilada of life, if you will. And oftentimes it's hard for us to notice if we've become unconsciously identified with a persona. I know that's big fancy phrasing, but it basically just means maybe there's a way that we show up in the world that we sort of think is the most or the be all and end all of us. And actually, it might be that it's something that we've come to become identified with, meaning we're not able to take the item of clothing off. We actually think we are the clothing, right? So if I walked around and thought that I was this polo shirt, that would be problematic. But it's likely that I might walk around thinking that I might be the responsible one, or I might be the people pleaser, or I might be the rebel or the good listener. And we can fill in the blanks for these, and they get in the way of us being more of ourselves. So let me know if you're listening to this right now and there's a persona that you tend to occupy. We all occupy many of them, and they're not bad. We need them. Then they can be an amazingly true part of your expression. Just like you might have, for instance, an item of clothing or a hat or something that you really like it and you really feel yourself when you wear it, but you might not want to wear it all the time, right? So if you've got that favorite outfit, but now, you're going to sleep in it, and now you're casually watching Netflix in it, and now you're trying to do yoga in it, maybe that's not the best use of it. Do you get what I'm saying here? So give me a +1 if you understand what I'm saying. With welcome, if you've just joined us, I am here live. We are here live, and I'm going to be taking some questions as well. So let me know if you've got any questions or challenges that are coming up for you in your life. And let me just add this here as well into the chats. I do have a special that is running this weekend on my live program, which is called The Transformation. This is a 6-month program. It's both a curriculum program, so self-study modules that get released to you through the course of 6 months. And it's also a live group program. We get together twice a month, every month, and we coach and we work on stuff. And it's actually, it's a small group, so it's nice. It's a good way of getting a lot of customized attention, but without necessarily the price tag of private coaching. And it also allows you to hear from other people and their challenges. Sometimes it's a really great opportunity to hear someone being coached on something that is also going on in your own life, because it can sometimes be an easier way to hear it. So welcome to Colleen, coming in from Boston. I'm curious, so New England, are the leaves turning yet? I did just go out a few days ago here. I'm outside DC, and the wind had that slight quality of autumn is on the way. That said, we are going to be hitting, I think it's like 98, 99 degrees next week. So I think summer's continuing here for a little bit because I'm taking a sociology course right now. Right on. Kiara, am I saying that right, is here from London. Good morning to you too. Body language is fascinating. Oh yeah, sure thing. There are some great YouTube channels on that. Welcome if you just joined us. Free to say hello. Let us know where you're tuning in from. And let me know if you have any questions. And if any of you are in the chat, just let me know if that link works to bring you over to the transformation program page. So we're here. I'm talking a little bit about how to be more authentic. One of the big moments, and it's not really a moment, it's for most of us a decent process through time. A big moment in authentic transformation is when you notice that you're not your striver self, right? So, I've been in the human development, personal growth world my entire career. I used to be a seminar junkie. I used to go to everything. And the advantage of that is I got to see a lot of things. And one of the presuppositions, which just sort of means almost like one of the unchallenged, already there ideas of the personal growth world, is that you're a self that wants to be its best self, right? Now, in part, that's true, right? It's great to try and be the best version of ourselves. At the same time, being the best version of ourselves often can come from what we call self-idealization. Again, fancy phrase. Need to learn how to find more succinct phrases for this. But really, self-idealization means you have a sense of your ideal self, right? This is the person I want to be, and that you're kind of constantly striving to be that. But at an authentic stage of development, you might be much more interested in the question, well, who am I really? And that's not just a mind projection into the future, right? Life has a design for you. Life has ideas for you. Life has a path for you. There are parts of you that are difficult about being you, us, any of us as human beings. And they are an important piece of our expression. Most people, when they have an idealized self, it's almost a bit like the equivalent of, I'm going to get up at 5 a.m., drink a green smoothie, and then I'm going to go to yoga. Then I'm going to come back and read 2 books. And then I'm going to get a book contract, and then this and that and this and that and this. And you may say, hey, actually, that's not my ideal self is, I want to go to the beach and sip a pina colada. Well, good on you. But life is more than an idea that we have about it. And quite often that idealized self is not just a sort of a positive heart vision of our life. It's also driven by our inner critic. It's also driven by the one that tells us that we need to be better, or that we should be better, or that we should be different. I'm grateful that self-love gets talked about a lot more. When I first got into this kind of work, pretty much 20 years ago at this point, no one was really talking about self-love, at least in the circles that I moved in. Now, that phrase has become so common that you might sometimes think, well, what does it mean? If you're having that experience, do check out, I have a video, how to be more self-loving. I released it about 3 years ago. It's one of my favorite videos. It's a deep dive on the topic. I think you'll get something from it. But in essence, self-love is a lot about acceptance. Right. And when we're striving to be something that we're not already, that the challenge can be that we're not actually accepting in a more real and compassionate and aware way who we are now. Right. It's almost this sense of today isn't good enough, but tomorrow might be better. Now, this is tricky because often we do want a better tomorrow. Right. If you're in pain right now, you might want tomorrow to be less painful. If you're struggling in a particular domain of your life, home, relationship, money, career, friends, you might want a better tomorrow. But it's saying that a more authentic orientation to that would also include accepting where you are now, so that you also get to have today as well as be building towards a better tomorrow. And not just that all your problems get solved in the future, because most of us have problems ongoingly in life, right? And you thought, oh gosh, Sunday, Jack, thanks. I've been trying to get away from work or problems, and now you're telling me I'm going to have problems my whole life. But a big part of what we do on this channel is try to be sober about reality, because reality gets that little bit easier when we're sober about it and we're not fighting it. And so part of not fighting reality is realizing, yeah, we might always have some challenges and some things that are difficult, both about life and just about ourselves, right? There are certainly things in my reality that I'm like, wow, this is just tough. This is a hard aspect of being me. This is a way that I'm sensitive. This is a way that I'm kind of high maintenance. This is a way that life is difficult for me. And I notice it's not difficult for the next person. But then there's other things where I notice, oh, this comes easily to me, but this doesn't come so easily to the next person, right? We're all some kind of mix of those things. So when we start to relax the striver self, it's almost like life is less of a performance and it becomes a little bit more of a sort of a high touch, high quality experience. And we're equally as interested in our potential as we are in the places that we have liabilities, right? Which we could call wounds, or places that we need to learn to love ourselves more. I'll give you just a quick example, right? It's easy to walk around in the world. Let's say you're someone that's sweet, right? And sweetness is a great quality. And I've sometimes had people reflect back my sweetness. It's a great thing. But no one's only sweetness, right? No one can only be sweet. We all also have authentic emotional experience, and not all of that is going to be sweetness, right? Sometimes it might be frustration and disappointment. Sometimes it might be resignation. Sometimes it might be anger. Sometimes you might have had someone trespass upon a value or a boundary, and the authentic response to that might be anger, but your self-image of sweetness is kind of getting in the way. That's the danger of moving in one of these unidentified personas, is that it has us disconnect from our real experience, because there's something about it that, you know, it's almost like, you know, I sometimes have this if I go out cycling and the sun starts to drop and I've got my shades on, and then eventually I lift my shades and I realize, oh, it's not quite as dark as I thought it was, because I'm looking at it through the shades. Well, we're always looking at life through some of these personas until they become more distinguished. So let me know if that's making sense. Yes, no, give me a +1 if it's yes. If it's not, give me a question, give me pushback. You don't have to agree with me. This is not a, you know, I say you do kind of orientation. This is me putting some things into your reality that might be helpful, and that's certainly been helpful to, you know, many clients that I've worked with at this stage. So let me just drop over here. Welcome if you're just joining us. Feel free to say hi. Let me know that you're here. Let me know where you're tuning in from. You can also do that if you are tuning in after the event. I will read all the comments. Thanks for showing up here. Jessica, I'm from and was just in Maine until yesterday. No full foliage yet. Okay, thanks. Do you have in the moment tips, mantra for radical acceptance in a conscious moment of struggle with it? So anytime that we tend to slow down our experience, I think it gets a little bit easier to digest, right? So one of the things that can make the present moment hard is when we're amped up, is when we're spinning, is when we might be in the perspective that I shouldn't be having this experience. So anything that allows you to start more from a place of, even if I don't like it, and even if it's incredibly difficult, like, this is the experience that I'm having right now, right? Even if it might shift as I put attention on it, you know. So it sounds simple, it's hard to do, but it's sort of like, you know, start where you are. You know, if you need directions from here to there, you have to start here, otherwise the directions don't make sense. The other thing is, you know, we have primary and kind of like secondary experience, right? So the primary experience could be something like, I'm contracted, right? I don't know. I'm in the supermarket and someone's just done something, I don't like it, right? So I'm feeling a little bit contracted or triggered. Sometimes then there's a secondary experience, which is your perspective on your primary experience. So your secondary experience might be like, I shouldn't be triggered, right? Or this isn't a big deal. Or it could be righteousness, right? It could be like, well, they really shouldn't do this, and I'm sure they're the kind of person who, you know, all of this is starting to take you away a little bit from your primary experience. So it's easier to be self-accepting in the moment when we start to notice, okay, there are different layers to this experience, but how can I, if I can, try and stay with my primary experience without too much commentary, basically. Now, sometimes we can't do that, and we are, you know, down in the commentary. So then at that point, you know, the awareness becomes, can I notice that that's actually a commentary that I'm having, and can I just accept that, right? Oh, I'm triggered. I didn't like what this person did with the shopping cart, and now I'm running a kind of commentary on them. Like, even that would be more awareness than certainly I bring to situations at times when I'm feeling triggered, right? So even just be aware, okay, yeah, I'm kind of triggered right now. Anything you can do to regulate, right? Slow down your breathing. Just the long, drawn out breath, doing that several times can be useful. But, you know, accepting yourself is accepting yourself even when you're doing things that you wish maybe you weren't doing, or that you wish you weren't having that kind of reaction, right? We're trying to slow down the kind of the impulsivity, or the tendency to kind of get up and identified with our thoughts and then sort of be on a runaway train, you know, rather than actually just noticing like, oh yeah, this upset me. It might be that in that moment of awareness, you can notice, well, actually, one of the reasons this upsets me is because I wouldn't do that, right? Now, I wouldn't do that. Sometimes might mean, yeah, because the thing they're doing, let's say, is a antisocial behavior and you prefer pro-social behaviors. But there might also be something in there, right? Like I wouldn't do that because it would mean something, right? Or it would mean me, putting my needs first, or the thing that they're doing is selfish, right? So let me just run this example. So yeah, this can come up for me occasionally. Like if I, when you're in line and then suddenly they open the next line in the supermarket, and then someone who's behind you in line will kind of cut over to that line, in effect, skipping line. I don't super like that. To me, it seems kind of easy to just to slow it down and to notice, okay, we're already in line. So why don't we let the people who are further up the line, who've queued the longest, move over? To me, that would make sense. That would be a good sort of community agreement. But there isn't a real set of agreements here. No one's really going to enforce it. The supermarket person probably isn't going to enforce it. So, at that point in awareness, I have a couple options. One is an acceptance option. The other one is to say something. But to kind of sit in the middle of like, I'm going to stew on this and kind of energize it and make that person wrong in my head and, imagine other things about them. Firstly, the vast majority of instances, I don't know anything about them. So anything that I'm projecting on them really is a projection at that point, right? Like, I don't know. I don't even know the circumstances. It could be that, they're really trying to get home and I don't know, be with a toddler or, be with someone in need, so I don't really know. So a good way to accept the moment is that sort of simplicity. Like either I'm just going to accept or I'm going to do, but I'm not going to try and be in the kind of the middle ground longer than I need to, right? So it's sort of put up or shut up in some ways, right? It's kind of do a thing or don't do a thing, but sort of make your decision and be with it. So yeah, good question. Thanks for that. A few more have joined us here live. Welcome to this YouTube live. We're talking about authentic self. Please leave me a comment. Let me know that you're here and where you're tuning in from. Hi from Milan. Thank you for your content. You're welcome. What's going on in Milan? I imagine it's still pretty hot this time of year. Is that right? I've never been to Milan. I have been to Italy many times. I like it a lot and never got up to Milan. Welcome. Hi, White Rose Angel. Hi, Jack, here in sunny California. Give the man some likes. Yes, whatever you're doing right now, stop everything. Smash that like button. Can't even say. Maybe this is why I haven't got many likes recently. Smash the like button. That is it. That is my authentic command to you right now in this moment. Grace is here from Philadelphia. I have to tell you how much I appreciate YouTube videos. They help me a lot learning how to deal with breadcrumbs. That's awesome. Super happy to hear that. Thank you for being open to anything that you can learn from the channel. That's gratifying for me. Yeah, welcome. So let me know if you've got any questions. I am here to take some questions. I will get to them in the order that they are given. And I'm also just going to repost this link here for those of you that are interested in doing deeper work with me. The sort of best value way that you can do that is be part of my group program. Gets you access to 12 live group coaching calls over the course of 6 months. And it's a really robust curriculum that I'll take you through. It's basically my deep dive and saying, this is what, I've learned from my, at this stage, over 10 years of coaching one-on-one, 20 years of being in the human development space. All that time pretty much being on a path of inquiry and discovery myself, getting to work with, hundreds, probably thousands really at this stage, having multiple thousands of hours of coaching time and, sort of bringing that to people in a easy to digest format. It's actually an audio-based format, so people listen to it when they are, it's funny, people say to me, they say, I listen to you when I clean. Now, I happen to think I'm more interesting than that, but, you be the judge. You be the judge. But it means you can listen at the gym, you can listen on your commute, you can listen when you're, as I hear sometimes, you're on a Zoom call at work, but it doesn't require your full participation and you could be learning something else. Now, I didn't say that. I didn't endorse that. That's between you and your employer, but I have heard that this is also sometimes when people listen to things. But the idea behind this is a real scaffolding and inquiry into saying, who are you? If you're relaxing this driver, if you're relaxing these social personas, if you're relaxing the programming that was given to you in childhood, that isn't the true you, right? Because we're all going to get some kind of conditioning and programming. And people sometimes talk about conditioning and programming like it's all bad. I don't think that's true, right? I think it's a good thing that we get conditioned and programmed to be social contributors, right? To sort of say, hey, we're in a society, and this is how we want to be, and this is what it means to cross a road, and this is how we drive on the road, and this is how school works. There's lots of things that culturally we inherit and get imprinted on us. The challenge is we're also at a stage of development, socially and culturally, where we're moving into this authentic stage of development, right? Where some of the old structures are starting to diminish and die that keep people from a deeper authenticity. So it's not, if you want to be more authentic, it's not that most of us can just say, well, cool, pay attention during your childhood and your upbringing and your education, and you'll end up with an authentic development, right? A lot of it is actually the socialized self. And then the socialized self also needs to be relaxed so that something truer can come forward, right? So it's a bit like the inner critic. The inner critic is an important structure of development. It teaches you what not to do, right? Don't touch that. It will hurt, right? Don't put your hand on the stove. It will burn. Don't run out in the road. A lot of it has that kind of short, snappy, no energy to it. A lot of it is also about keeping you safe. Don't stand out because you'll get taken down. Don't stray too far from the accepted path. Now, there is some wisdom to that, because in a lot of human history, going off on the accepted path was definitely not available to people, right? For the vast majority of, I'm not an evolutionary biologist, but the vast majority of human history, people weren't going to be interested in authentic development because they're interested in survival, right? We still have survival challenges. Some of us have it ongoingly. Some of us have it at times. And some of the time you have capacity to say, you know what, actually, I want more from my life, and I want to be more of who I really am. And maybe that's now becoming more of an option and even a birthright for people. So if that's true, this is the essence of really what this program's about, is saying, hey, what are all the things that really get in the way of you being more authentic? What can you practice? What can you put attention on? What increase can you be in with yourself that will allow you to be more authentic? And with that, less fearful, more trusting, more self-loving, and more open to yourself, your unfolding, life experience. Most of us want to approach the world from that place, but it's easy to be in the world in a way that's stressed and fearful. And for most of us, this is also, it's ongoing work to continue to be more present and to relax the places that we're contracting. This is as a container to hold you in that work for, a decent period of time. Because I say this work isn't just, it's not just a breakthrough moment, right? Some of the personal growth world and industry operates on, in one moment your life can change, right? There can be those moments in life, for better or for worse, right? But real authentic development tends to be a through time process, right? And it tends to come from bringing some intentionality to the process when you're at a stage of development that it makes sense, right? So for some people, it's like, yeah, becoming my authentic self is not a priority. It's not really of interest. Doesn't even maybe really make sense to me. Sometimes I hear critiques when people are trying to be more authentic. Other people say, oh, well, it's just self-indulgent. It's all about you. Well, it could be that someone's authenticity is actually about learning how to relax the part of them that makes it all about them, right? We all have a part of us that's likely to be more, self-serving or narcissistic, or that didn't get the attention that it wants, or wants more attention than it had. But none of that means that we shouldn't be on a path of more authentic development, right? I don't think it's actually selfish, because the more authentic you are, the more you're actually able to get yourself out of other people's stuff, right? Sort of meaning, if I go back even to the, I'm in the shopping cart and someone cuts the line, like, yeah, I might challenge them on that behavior and say, hey, couldn't we honor the line process? But if I'm now spinning in my own persona of, well, I'm the responsible one, I'm the good guy, I'm the do right guy, that's going to take a lot of my energy that I'm also likely to be projecting out onto them, right? The more that I sort of clean up the surface over here, the easier it is for me to be with a range of other people's ways of showing up, and actually not have to get into the judgment and the commentary so much, right? No, it's nuanced territory. Might not mean that you prefer to be in the company of someone, right? You might have a friend where you're sort of like, yeah, the more authentic I am, they can't really meet me there. And this doesn't actually make sense for us to be in quite so much touch, right? So we also talk about this in the program, that there are costs to your authenticity. Not everyone can come every stage of the journey with you. Sometimes your social and professional realities might reconfigure a little bit. And that's sometimes what stops us being more authentic, right? Is that when we think about being more authentic, we imagine, well, I don't even know, could I do this role? Could I stay in this job? Like, none of this culture is about being more authentic, right? So, again, it's not to say that there aren't obstacles and costs on the path, But in my experience, for most people, it's worth sticking with it and finding a way of being that is more aligned. The more aligned, typically, the less fearful. Typically, the closer you are to yourself. So you have more self-love, acceptance, and self-intimacy. And the more you actually surprise yourself, you might inspire other people, right? So even if a culture is mostly inauthentic in certain ways, right, which a lot of, let's say, professional or big corporate cultures may be, I think they are gradually getting more authentic. Sometimes people stay in that and actually they just become a champion for something that's a little bit more authentic, right? It doesn't have to be wholly authentic all the time. It might just be we're moving in that direction. Sometimes when people are on that journey, they get to the point and they notice, you know what? I'm actually really burnt out. I'm really frustrated. There's a sort of longing in me that this kind of way of being doesn't meet, right? My way of being isn't really working or resonating with this collective way of being, right? And at a certain point, I'm not willing to pay that cost because this collective thing that we're doing isn't about something that is higher enough in my heart, basically, that it makes sense for me to sacrifice some authenticity for the team, right? Now, you might be willing to sacrifice some authenticity. If what we're doing is I don't know, preventing malaria, you might say, yeah, it's okay that some of these interactions aren't that authentic because I buy into the bigger vision and I know why I'm doing it. If the bigger vision is really, it's, let's just say, profit above all else, and there's not that much else that really, even though we have a sort of corporate social responsibility plan, it doesn't really vibe that that's really the essence of what we're doing. Sometimes people get to the point where they say, you know what, I need a different way of being. I need a different way of doing my work, right? Now, all of that is difficult because work is support and foundation and livelihood and bills to pay and all that stuff. So, we get into this. I've been in this territory a lot myself. I've been in it with clients. I've helped clients into sabbaticals. I've helped clients stay and try to reconfigure, basically stay and do everything they can to make the culture more authentic and then see where they get to. And then sometimes they've decided to stay. Sometimes they then decide to leave, but they leave knowing, you know what, I gave it my best shot. Or sometimes they create a plan to say, 6 to 12 months from now, I'm going to transition out of this. So I actually don't have so much to lose. So I'm going to just keep showing up as authentically as I can. And I'm going to risk a few conversations. I'm going to risk giving that feedback to my boss, or I'm going to risk speaking what I see, or I'm going to give a bit more consideration to myself in meetings where I normally wouldn't speak up. So I'm going to use it as practice, right? A lot of you will subscribe to this sort of idea in your dating life as well, where you get a little bit less attached to the way that the date has to go, and you get a little bit more interested in how can I show up here? How can I try a different way of being me? Right, so you can use a lot of these things as practice. Overall, if you come join us in the program, we're saying, hey, this is a place that can hold you in this. I can give you my input and support ongoingly, and you can also get the support of listening in and hearing other people working on their challenges. Because sometimes, I'll say, even if someone's me that's been on a path like this for a long time and has been lucky to live in subcultures that really value this orientation to reality, sometimes it can still be a lonely path where you sort of think, does the world really get it? Or are there enough of us? Or, all of that stuff. And whether you decide to join this program or not, I would just say, put yourself in some kind of community of support. Find something, right? Whether it's a spiritual path, it's a community group, it's some kind of learning group where the surround is helping you become more true to who you are. There's something really priceless about the reflections and the kind of interpersonal development that happens that you can then start to embody and internalize more. All right. So if you're interested in that, I put the link here in the chat. Check it out and let me know if you have any questions about that or anything else. And I'm going to come back here. Let me just take a little sip of water. Welcome if you just joined us. I see a few of you have. Sarita, hi. Love from India. Okay, cool. We're in India. Hello from Oslo. That's Zane. I used to have some kind of Patagonia clothing mania until I heard from someone that I am a real Patagonia snob. I grew up in the previous Soviet Union without Patagonia. Oh, wow. Yes. So my understanding is that guy, the founder of Patagonia, didn't he turn the company over to sort of like a foundation or some kind of vehicle to really pursue environmental causes? Am I thinking of the right person? How to find out why always involved with not consistent, unavailable men. Suggest any video already on your channel. So I have a number of videos in this territory. There's one I did. I did it a few years back, but it got a lot of interest. I think it's something like 4 reasons you may attract emotionally unavailable men, something like that. So you could definitely go check that out. Just some super quick ideas, like places of inquiry that you could go to in this moment. So one thing you can do, this is a technique, and this applies not just to this question. It's a really broad technique. It's kind of popularized by Byron Katie, who has this body of work that she calls the work, right? Doing the work. It's like a certain perspective on inner work, and it's a process they call turnaround. So you sort of take the thing and you just sort of say, okay, do I absolutely know that this person's unavailable, or turn it around? Is there any way that I could be unavailable right now? It doesn't mean to say that you are, right? It's just we're trying to almost sort of loosen up the thing and see, is there another way of looking at it? So I've had people who've watched videos that I've put out on unavailable men, and they say, well, you know what, listening to that, like what I've had to own is that I'm kind of unavailable in certain ways, right? Or sometimes the reason you may want to attract, or your soul, or some part of your being may want to attract in an unavailable person, is because there's a lid on the intimacy, right? And most of us will have places where we want a lid on the intimacy, right? Even if part of us craves a deeper intimacy, there might be other parts of us that fear being smothered or lost or kind of overtaken or sort of overwhelmed by the other person, right? So in our wisdom, we may attract someone that's unavailable because typically we don't have that issue, because unavailable people are always typically putting a lid on the intimacy, right? So there could be some kind of direction of inquiry there. Like, oh, is it somehow strategic? Because then I don't have to risk that thing that was difficult with, say, mom, dad, or a sibling, or a first boyfriend or girlfriend, where I kind of got overwhelmed by the person. So actually, even though I say I want availability, someone who's like really available and really, really connected to the relationship might be a little bit much for me. Right now, we're all going to be on a spectrum here. So, what I've just said could be true in my experience, right? That I could be fear being overwhelmed by someone. But that, doesn't necessarily mean that has to be the defining thing. It's just saying, hey, that could be part of the mix. Why else might you attract someone that's unavailable? Well, it might be that you're unwilling to confront your own sobriety, right? Meaning you actually know a little earlier in the connection that they're unavailable, but you're not willing to listen to it, right? Because maybe there's something else that's compelling about it. So part of this can also be a self-sobering process where you sort of slow it down enough to notice. And sometimes this can be really, inconvenient and or heartbreaking, right? Because you sort of notice, wow, this person would be great if they were more available. Right. But the reality is that they're not, and they're unlikely to change. We don't want to be in that change business of another person. Even though it's, sometimes it's part of us wants to, or it can be kind of attractive in certain ways, but we really want to try to get out of that business. Right. So then you might say, well, I don't really need to fear unavailable people. I just need to notice, and probably fairly early in dating or connecting with someone, I might notice. Now, sometimes you don't, because they're kind of like, they super show up until they don't, right? And that, I've talked about this, what I call the emotionally available, unavailable guy. Again, you can watch my video on that. That can be trickier to discern, because it's sort of like, oh, actually, if I look at month 1, month 3, it seemed like there was a lot that was available, but actually then they kind of dropped off, or then they decided that they weren't into it. So, that's also why we try to draw that sobriety process out through time. And we maybe get curious about, for instance, emotionally available, unavailable guy, right? So he's emotionally available to connect with you, but he's sort of unavailable structurally. Like, notice, what else has he got going on in his life, right? Because if he's putting a lot of attention on you because he doesn't have a lot going on in his life, that's probably something that we want to get curious about. Like, where's his own, expression and livelihood and purpose in the world? Obviously we all have, sort of seasons where that's maybe stronger, and seasons where it may be, less, or it might be transitioning into something else. But normally that needs a certain amount of attention for anyone, right? Unless they're kind of, just completely out of the game financially, but even then, people, typically guys, and if they have a more masculine essence, but most of us anyway, we're going to want some kind of purpose, right? We're going to want something that gets us up in the morning to engage and help and, contribute and express ourselves. So get curious about that. Now, you might be listening and saying, well, hang on a minute, Jack, that's far from the issue. The issue isn't, some guy who's, financially retired and, sort of has all this time and he wants to spend all that time with me. The issue is the guy doesn't really want to spend that much time. But I'm saying I think you can learn to discern that before you get attached, right? So that's an easy phrase to say. It can be hard to do, but that is often where the sobriety is, right? Before I get too attached or too into ideas about this or too into what this could be, let me just try and get really sober about what sort of availability this person has. And maybe I can even, invite them to talk about, what are they looking for? Or, what have they found? What has been their experience of relationship? What else is going on in their life? Sometimes the guy is sort of really into it and then dials it back and then says, yeah, I actually can't do something more serious with you because of my daughter. Right. Or I've sometimes seen this where it's sort of like, and to be fair to the guy, he might be working pretty hard and, solo parenting or co-parenting and putting a lot of energy, and his expression as a father is important to him. But maybe there's a way that we could include that on the front end of the conversation or as we sort of get into it. And also just, I'm trying to think what would be a really good metaphor for this. This one I don't think it's perfect, but maybe it starts to move in the direction. So, I used to run races. I do occasionally still run races, but let's say maybe not quite as fast as I did at once. But I used to sometimes have this bad habit of starting really fast, right? So I can even think of this particular race that's sort of etched in my memory. This is in the north of England. It's actually a fantastic setting, northeast England. It starts on the beach. The first basic mile is along the beach. And so, the gun goes, and so we're all going, and basically I'm in the lead. And I remember looking back over my shoulder to my buddy, and he's kind of going like, dude, you need to calm down, because in sobriety, I'm not the fastest person in this field, right? I just run occasionally, and I'm interested in sport. Like, a bunch of these people are legitimate runners, right? I mean, I don't mean to delegitimize myself, but like, running is their thing. They join a running club. They knock out half marathons and marathons. Running is their life, right? I'm not going to beat these people. Now, that doesn't mean to say that you couldn't say, well, look, yes, 500 meters into the race, I was in the lead, if that's what you're aiming for. But that really wasn't what I was aiming for. I was aiming for my best time in the race, right? The highest finish. So we could say, if we were looking at that point, oh, look at this guy, maybe he's going to be here at the end. But if we had any sobriety about the situation, like, does this guy even run? Like, has he run a race of this distance? Has he even run on a beach? By the way, running on the beach is a whole different thing. Talk about tired legs. Do you kind of get what I'm saying? So the people who are in the know there were not worried that this kind of like guy that probably doesn't look like a runner like they look like is kind of extending his lead out in the beach, because they know, you sometimes I don't know if you watch the Tour de France or any pro cycling, right? They'll let people go way out because the peloton knows that they can reel them in, that they are on the money, right? Or even in the World Championship athletics, I didn't watch, I just caught a few of the highlights. There was this really courageous 19-year-old woman who she took out over 100-meter lead in this, I think it was a 5,000-meter race. So she's way out on her own. But they let her go because they knew that ultimately they were running the pace that was optimal to finish the race. And it was only in the last lap and a half that they started to really reel her in. And then suddenly the leading pack go past her. So I'm not trying to lecture about athletics, but do you sort of get the point? If you can kind of be a bit more sober in yourself, you might notice, oh, this guy he's almost overly or underly available right off the bat. Like he's either hitting me up more than I would imagine at this stage, like he's really into it, right? And obviously if you go far down that way, we get into kind of like the romance scam, right? The guy who's like, oh babe, and this and that. And, it's just literally watching a video last night from some investigative reporting from a group here in DC, where they basically realized this guy was a scammer, but they played along with it the longest amount of time so they could get as much information out of him and pass it on to authorities and kind of get him shut down. But, the guy is saying all sorts of things they've never met. He's so in love with them. He makes their day. He's sending them, and he's also sending them a whole bunch of messages that were, on a website elsewhere that were basically copy and pasting, and he was doing it to multiple people. So again, in sobriety, okay, so I'm this guy's everything, but he's never met me. That's not a sober proposition. So, getting a little bit clear off the bat of like, how do I really feel? How do I feel when I don't have to put my instincts aside, right? And you might say, well, my instincts are off because they've gotten me in trouble before. But nearly always, for most of us, when there's a thing that hasn't worked out, it's not that it actually completely blindsided us. It's that there was part of us that maybe knew or had an intuition, but that part of us was getting shut down. Right now, part of life is learning, what is that voice? When can I trust it? When can I not? So you don't need to be hard on yourself about that. But you don't need to fear unavailable men. You need to fear that you're going to start getting more attached to them, right? You can notice. It's a bit like, you could fear, every piece of food that went into your mouth, right? You could sort of say, I need it to be, deeply investigated by the scientists, run all these sort of tests on it, right? Maybe, or what you could do is put the mouthful in and have some trust that your body knows when something's not right. Now, this isn't a foolproof plan. This is not FDA approved, but you get the sense, like sometimes you eat something and you kind of notice, oh, it's starting to not feel good in my stomach. So maybe you stop eating it, right? Or maybe you notice in your mouth, like that kind of, oh, it doesn't smell right, doesn't taste right. So there's a lot of life that you can filter out based upon just actually noticing and paying attention. If you go on 3 dates, 5 dates, and then you sort of discern, actually, this guy doesn't seem that available, I don't think that's the biggest waste of time, particularly if you're practicing your own, authenticity. Maybe you find on dates that you tend to, over talk or under talk or overshare, and there's something you're practicing a new way of being. I don't think any of that's wasted. Where it's difficult is if you start to get attached into that guy and it's hard for you to unattach, and you're having to distort a lot of your reality to sort of imagine, well, oh, maybe, or if only I take these good aspects and kind of blow them up, but I'm not having to look at this other piece of information. You could even ask a guy about his availability. Does he know what being emotionally available, what does that mean to him? How does he imagine wanting to show up for a partner? How has he shown up when he's been in relationship? Now, you sort of say that how he has shown up is how he is going to show up with you, right? Because there's some uniqueness to different connections. But you're basically putting the topic out there on the table to say, this is important to me, right? I'm not really interested to get attached to a guy that doesn't want to try to attach back, right? So I don't think a guy who actually does want to get into some kind of relationship is going to be afraid to hear that, because that sounds like wisdom, right? Like, if I in the past have got attached to people and it hasn't helped me, how's it going to help him if you start to get attached to him? It's probably not in his highest interest. So I'm saying sort of get closer to it, but not in a way that is sort of fearful. Get kind of closer to it in a way that is observant and taps into your instincts and intuition, where you listen to yourself, you slow it down. You don't have to make premature judgments about it, but certainly there's, if you were going to go one way or another, I would say imagine that the guy isn't available until he proves that he's somewhat available, right? Then you sort of imagine he's available, and then at some point you get confused because you're like, oh, he's not actually available. But we're trying to do it not from a place of being fearful and distrusting, more sort of like eyes open, right? If I'm in central London and I'm listening to a street musician, I'm going to be a little bit more aware of my surroundings because I know that pickpockets operate in those areas. Now, I can do that and still enjoy the music, but I've got a little bit more awareness, right? So it's not that I'm looking at everyone and sort of vigilantly, is that a pickpocket? Is that a pickpocket? Is that a pickpocket? That's not how I want to spend my time, and that probably isn't that effective. But just to notice, okay, can I feel where my wallet is? Do I know what's in my possession? Do I know exactly where my phone is? Do I want to put it in a slightly secure location? Okay, I'm aware. Let me listen. Right? You going on the date. I'm not going to imagine this guy is any particular guy. I'm going to get curious. I'm going to reserve the right to ask questions. I'm going to really try and listen. I'm going to suspend judgment until we've got, more time under the belt, right? At the moment, this is just a guy. He's interesting. He has my attention, but I don't really know what he's available for. And so until that's taken out in time, let's see. And I think the vast majority of guys can't keep showing up in some way, sort of with an availability they don't really have for multiple months, right? I think there are these odd occasions where someone's like, gosh, this guy, he was sort of so great, for 6, 9, 12 months, and then suddenly it didn't happen. Maybe there were some ways that we could have noticed that. I don't know all the specifics of these situations, but that's, I think, super rare. I think for most of you, the unavailability is kind of more obvious. And the issue is, can you just let it go and move on? Just noticing, yeah, I'm waiting for a guy that has more availability. Sobriety and dating is most people I meet will be nothing to me, right? Most people I meet, it's not going to go anywhere. Maybe we don't even get on a date. Maybe we have the first date and it's not that interesting. Maybe a subset of them we get on a second or third date, but it's not really unfolding, or there's not some mutual interest. So most of the time, if we just realize that's going to be the case, then I think it can also be a little bit easier. Now, the one last thing, I've kind of drilled into this question a lot. So the one last thing I want to say, and then I'll come back to some more, is, what is emotional availability, right? And you can go find videos. I've kind of opened this up, any title that has emotional availability in it or something like available, unavailable. I've probably double clicked on this, so you can go listen to it at length. But it's getting curious about, well, is there some way that we're holding emotional availability that's actually not helping the situation, right? That maybe there's some standard that I have that actually it's the way that I show up, and maybe I have the right or the desire, let's say, to be met that way. That might just be true. Like, let's say you're a sort of a high connection, high show up, high availability partner, right? So you're responsive. You return your texts quickly. You drop things for people if they're in need. You want to spend a lot of time with your person. All those things are beautiful, right? But we want you to be at least minimally met in that domain, right? So you're going to need someone who's also somewhat, high touch, high contact, high responsiveness, right? And maybe you could also add high maintenance in certain ways. That gets a bad rap, but I'm going to need a decent amount of attention, and I don't want to pretend that's not the case. So that could just be true for you, right? It could also be true that some of that stuff has been dialed up because there's a little bit of a disconnection in some other place, right? Maybe with yourself, or maybe there are other places in your life that you're not receiving and giving love. And so there's a lot of attention that goes on this partner bucket, but you're not maybe attending to these other buckets. And those other buckets won't replace your desire for partner. But if those are filled up, the way that you go in, it's almost like, rather than being, a wilted plant that is just thirsting for water, it's like, no, the plant's doing pretty good. And it also does even better if we add some, fertilizer, or we put it in a sunnier corner. But the plant was already doing decently. So if you can't do somewhat decently without that person, that could be something to get curious about. It could just be true that you're a person, I just do so much better when I'm in a relationship. That could be true. But we want to sort of find out, is it really true? Are there ideas that I've held about this? Do I think the relationship might be a cure-all to something in my life, my loneliness, my disappointment? Because sometimes life might be saying, oh, when we go in from that perspective, we're going to keep meeting you with this sort of painful thing, because it's actually the pain that's going to wake you up to something else. So sometimes it could be just worth taking an hour and thinking, is there any wisdom that life is bringing me the unavailable thing? Is it trying to wake me up in some way? Is it that I'm replicating a pattern from the past, or I had a bad thing happen, so I've sort of gone 180 on it, but I haven't really healed the thing? Is it that I'm so overly available that my expectations of availability actually, even when I'm not in a relationship, they kind of cause me issues, because I sort of drop my life to go help my friends all the time, but then in a way that I'm sort of exhausted and it's not particularly sustainable. Get curious about it. You don't have to have the answers in that hour. Most of these are living inquiries, right? They're kind of living through you. But there is a stage in relational development that we sometimes call relational lessons. It seems to be for some people, particularly if they're on a bit more of a transformational path, that sometimes relationships come in to wake you up to something, and you might keep having the same thing until the wake-up call happens, right? It might just have a slightly different wrapper with different people. So if this is an ongoing pattern, why? Like, why? Is there something unself-loving about the way that you sign up for this? Is there something you're not willing to see about yourself or the situation? So sort of get curious, right? So I'm saying actually there's quite a lot of hope in this, in that there might be something there for you that you haven't yet fully embraced. Now that can be hard to hear if you're like, oh my gosh, I think about this all the time nonstop. But I'm trying to distinguish sort of, kind of repetitive thinking, like the things we often just think a lot that run through our minds, than kind of like, let's just shut off, stick the plane on air mode. How about stick the phone on airplane mode, get quiet, and actually just like, tonight, I'm just going to get curious about availability. That's actually what I'm doing. I'm going to stick some music on, just going to shut the world out for a bit and try to see if there's any new information that's coming in, right? Our best development often happens when we're open and curious in the inquiry. And that can be super hard to do when it's a difficult area of your life. But the advantage of it being a difficult area of your life is it has your attention, and attention's precious. So there's a thing that you want. So life might be saying, oh, there's a thing you want. Let's see if there's something in here for you, right? There's also questions about quality and quantity, right, of availability. So some people are good at being available, but not all the time, right? So it might be that a guy is available when he's not in work mode, but when he's in work mode, he's not as available as you are. And that might not work for you. You might want to know that, yeah, if something's going down in the middle of my day, I want to be able to reach him and he's going to respond. But for some people, they're actually like, you know what? That's okay for me. I have other people that I can also get support from. And what I really want is someone that wants to spend some time on the weekend and actually, do trips and adventure and quality time. So, you can also just get curious about, let's say it like this, right? It's easy for us to say that we have a type, but what does that really mean? Does that mean that, you sat down and did a week retreat and really, really thought deeply and got lots of reflection from your community about, who would be a great partner for you? Or is it sort of like you have a type? There's someone that you're attracted to and you've often gotten into a relationship with. And so it could be that your type is unavailable men, right? Doesn't mean that's what your full potential is. It's just that if you're not paying attention, that's what you attract. So let's actually double click on it and get kind of curious about it. And obviously, none of this is a blame orientation, right? It's not like, oh, I'm terrible, I'm attracting unavailable men. It's a way into wakefulness. So none of this is about bashing yourself or me making you wrong or any of that. It's actually just saying, maybe there's something in here for you. Unavailable men are in the world, and so are unavailable women. And unavailable men and unavailable women will continue to be in the world. And each of us probably has some small part of us that is unavailable, right? Meaning like a place that we don't like to fully bring ourselves, or so that can be a kind of an interesting inquiry. But the unavailability is going to be in the world, right? It's like mold, right? You might have mold sensitivity, but mold is going to be in the world. So it's more about, can I notice its presence and move, or take some action, right? Rather than I'm going to try and never attract mold, because mold is in the air right now. Mold is in the kitchen right now. That's just part of the deal of life, right? So unavailability in people is going to go, it's going to be there. The question is, how can you notice it and decide, oh, actually that doesn't work for me, but I don't need to make a big story about it. I don't need to get prematurely attached. I'm actually going to be a little bit almost like slower and almost more rational in a certain way. Do you know what I mean? A certain sort of, oh, let me see it. I don't actually need to make a big thing about that. That guy's not really available. So let me thank him, wish him well, and redirect my attention to more of what I'm looking for. All right. Sorry, you probably didn't want the deep dive on that, but that's what we got. That's what's going on. Welcome if you joined us, or if you're still here, or if you're tuning in after the event. Let me know where you are tuning in from. And feel free to leave a comment and let me know. Also, if you have any questions about my live group program, we have an enrollment offer that is running until 11:59 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow, which is Labor Day here in the United States. All right, let me jump back. Let me test my scrolling skills. Okay, Vixen says, Vixen says, let me say something. Peut-être je peux parler en français, ça serait plus facile. Vixen says, I struggle to just provide a supportive response and refrain from providing what I think are solutions. I think I need to go back to reading lessons. When other people are sharing personal troubles, hardships, health issues, etc. Yeah. Okay, got it. So let's just say a part of you is a helper, a giver, a solutions person, right? And probably there's something that's true about that, right? We are not all created equal, in my experience, in our ability to be helpful and be helpers, right? Some people have that knack of knowing, oh gosh, yeah, this person, they track things about people, right? Like they track, like, what kind of food does the person need when they're ill, or like what would be a really helpful thing if they have had a really hard day at work, or if they're really stressed. I know that this thing helps, or they don't like that thing, or they really like it when we go to this kind of place but not that kind of place, right? So there's a lot of gift. Now, every gift, it seems to me, also comes with the liability, right? So, if your gift is you have a lot of star energy, right? The gift is you might get to, become a pop star, right? What's the liability? You're gonna need a lot of that attention, right? Or you might become identified with your persona as a star and not be able to let it go and just sort of deal with people normally, right? So you sort of might always be on stage, and that's maybe hard for people to relate with, and maybe you miss out on some of the intimacy that you want. So yes, it can be difficult if people are telling you their problems, and you can either see what a solution might be, or it just sort of activates you into helping. You might have to learn and to practice. So sitting on your hands, even if that feels difficult, because we want you to have the option to say yes or no, right? Sometimes the difficulty with the gift in this instance is it's almost like you're compelled and you're not really choosing it. So we're going to increase your choicefulness. And the way that we're doing that is by practicing no. So maybe you could have a rule that I'm actually going to be a no for a bit to helping people, right? Unless it's something that is, so urgently kind of life-threatening, right? Yeah. So if I walk down the street and someone's, just been knocked off their bike, yeah, I'll go help. But if it's sort of like, someone needs help cleaning their garage, I might be a no for that. I don't have to be a no forever, but I'm practicing saying no. Because normally two things are a risk with this when this is the sort of the gift, right? One is you form One is that you form unconscious contracts with people about giving. So it's almost like you create a place in your life as the giver, and they may not have asked for it, and you may not have even chosen it, right? So the risk is you're creating these kind of unconsciousness in your contracts with people, and actually it might get in the way of, is there a real connection here? Like, do we just like spending time? Do we just like being together? Or is there a genuine friendship, which has a mutuality, right? A giving and a receiving, and a mutuality of talking and listening and attention. So in order for you to sort of free up on the spectrum of, help, don't help, we're going to practice down the don't help, so that you might also have to be with some other things. Like, can you be with the experience of, I don't get the value that people give me when I help. And maybe I need to now relate with a deeper experience of me, right? Or maybe when I'm not helping them, I actually get more in touch with my own anxiety or my own unworthiness, or you tell me, and so I'm say it has to be there, but there might be something. And actually that's good, because that's my authentic experience. When I take off the clothing called I'm helping, maybe I don't even know how to relate to people. Maybe I feel almost like alienated from myself, because if I'm not helping, I don't know that I'm valuable. And I have a little bit of a wound in the place called, am I valuable, right? Which many of us do. And so I solve that wound by being valuable, but it's not actually going to heal it. It just sort of is a strategy that, keeps it going, keeps it in place. So I might have to touch into some difficult experiences, right? So this makes sense sometimes that we might stay in the giver, because underneath the giver maybe is, awkwardness or anxiety or rejection or a lack of self-value. Who wants to feel that, right? But we may need to be in touch with it to actually have our own authenticity and to start to heal more meaningfully. So one of the things that you could do is go to friends and say, hey, listen to this crazy guy on YouTube. I want to practice not being the helper, because I think that there's more to my life than just being a helper. And so there are some situations where maybe I have stepped in the past, and I'm going to step in much more slowly, or I'm actually just not going to step in at the moment. You could let people know that. That might seem very strange to you to even have a conversation like that. If it does, it probably means there's something in this territory. You won't lose your ability to be compassionate, right? Sometimes you can be compassionate without doing anything, just by bearing witness and by listening. Most people don't need you to heal them, even if you have a capacity to heal or help them, right? So there's also just that sort of bit of sobriety that, yeah, even if you're a super helpful person, right, there are more needs in the world than you can help, right? So there's always going to be that. And this could be the biggest moment of wakefulness in your development. Let's just put it that way. People who are givers and helpers and are identified with it, this normally is the wake up moment. And what they don't like is that sometimes there's other parts of their experience where they're not actually only helpful, right? Where they might be being cantankerous or difficult or super emotional, maybe dysregulated, so there could be some good stuff in here that we actually want you to be in touch with. So yeah, learning how to sit on your hands and just cast your attention over all the relationships you have in your life, right? How many of them are constellated on you being a helper? And if you weren't, what would that relationship look like? Would it still be minimally fulfilling to both of you that you would want to show up for it? And also you could get curious about what's it like? Like, I can certainly think of the experience. If someone is trying to be a helper with you, where it's almost like, it can be the experience of someone ingratiating themselves to you, right? Like almost well, yes, I guess you could do that, but like, I don't need you to do that. Like, why are you doing that? Like, is it only generosity, or is there something else that's sort of more strategic or manipulative that's happening here? So you can get curious about that, right? Most of the time, it's not just selflessness. There's something in it, right? If it was selflessness, people could give and not have the experience of, well, hang on a minute, when's it my turn, right? So sometimes it's better to give a little less, but give when it's authentic, than just always be giving, but then sort of feel empty, frustrated, or a bit like, okay, because the other place that this goes is when I overgive and then someone routinely doesn't. At some point, often there's a snap, right? And you sort of say, well, look, I give all this to you and you don't give stuff to me. What's that about? But maybe they didn't want to get into that contract. Maybe you were the one that was pushing for that contract. So really rich territory in there. Definitely, if that's something that you would consider in any deeper work with me or anyone else, I think it would be a great territory for it. All right. Appreciate your content, Jack. Self-acceptance is a vulnerable and humble practice. Learning to accept myself as a parent. My goal is accept, reflect, grow, and evolve in all relationships, self and others. Yeah. Wow. Great goals. I'm curious if there's kind of one place that if you could bring that into most focus when you say accept, reflect, grow, and evolve in all relationships, is it this place as being a parent? I typically find if you can go to a place where the sort of rubber hits the road, sometimes that's where we might get most traction. Lots of yeses from Susan. Jessica loves Byron Katie. Yeah, I remember seeing her. Well, I remember seeing Byron Katie live in London. I'm going to say 2009, plus or minus 1 year maybe. And actually at the time, I remember finding a lot of it quite difficult. I remember, my girlfriend at the time, and some things that I thought were difficult about being in connection with her. And this sort of notion of turning it around. No, I did not want to turn that around. I didn't want to have any sort of openness to flexibility that this could look a different way. I was fairly convinced of my perspective on reality, right? Which in any kind of, not just romantic, but any kind of connection, that is a danger, right? When we are sort of fixed that our view is the one and only view. Sometimes what might be truer than I'm seeing reality super clearly is that I'm having an experience that is true, right? So the experience I was having was, I feel resentful that you don't seem to be that willing to actually, interesting from the topic we just talked about, to actually just kind of lift, like to help out, right? To sort of bring the groceries in, or to kind of participate in the daily tasks of life, right? So there may be some objective analysis that might say, objectively it is true that you're doing, 55 or 65 or 85% of those things. The experience is unarguable, is just subjective experience. And that is the experience that I'm feeling frustration or I'm feeling resentment. And that might be a better place to start, to be in to contact that and metabolize it and notice, is there a request in here? Is there something that you're actually asking for? Is there some kind of incompatibility that, actually it just works better when both people want to show up in this domain? Like, what is actually truer? So I like this process for just kind of opening it up to a more genuine inquiry. Right, it's so easy, and of course, this happens even more, for instance, in the political realm, for us to just sort of be convinced, well, this is how it is, right? This is the reason. These people don't care, or these people care too much, right? Or this is a bleeding heart liberal, or this is a narrow-minded conservative, or you sort of fill in the stereotypes. Whether that's actually true, or whether you actually know why someone is showing up. Like, how would I know if someone is doing a thing because they're a bleeding heart liberal? Like, I'd have to do a decent amount of inquiry to find out if that's true. Or how do I know that someone is saying something because they are a narrow-minded conservative? I'd have to really dig into that, right? What's their actual experience? It's sort of like the place that we want to start with other people, but we also want to start with ourselves. What is my actual experience? Question: what content do you think would reinforce attachment theory practice, becoming securely attached? My goal is to move from fearful avoidance to secure, and stop attracting and being attracted to avoidant, unavailable men. That's a good question. So there's a couple of things. So one is you could work with someone who is an attachment specialist. So for instance, Stan Tatkin, and you can look up, he's got a TEDx talk. He has a school that trains people in attachment. So anyone that's done his kind of training, I think, would be pretty schooled in this. I think a second thing you can do is bring it into consciousness, right? Meaning bring it into the light with someone like, hey, we're starting to get connected, right? So like we're in the conversation about whether there's something here, and not being premature about that, but let's say you've gone on enough dates and getting to know each other. You just sort of say, hey, something that's important to me is I want to try to move into a more secure form of attachment, right? What I've noticed in the past is I've typically been attracted to avoidant men, right? Or maybe to move from fearful avoidance to secure. So, okay, so maybe there's also some avoidance on my side as well. So you sort of you name it and then see, is there something here that can actually be in the we space between us? Because I think it's hard to work on attachment only from one side. Like generally finding secure attachment, you could say, is a property of the connection. And sometimes it's mostly there, right? It's sort of like I don't want to say pre-existing, but it's like mostly the quality of the connection between two people. Sometimes it's not. And the question is, can you move into that secure attachment? But it's not, it's a bit like, I was walking in the park. I did go back to England this summer, and I'm walking in one of my favorite parks, which is Battersea Park, and the south side of the Thames in London. And I stumble across, I didn't realize at the time, but it was actually Shell, the company, had their like employee sports day, and they're trying to do, like the 3-legged race, right? Well, it doesn't matter how fast you are, right? You can only win that 3-legged race if the two people are minimally on the same page. I think there's something true of that with secure attachment, right? Like, as much as it would be great if we could solve it from one side, I think it's going to be much easier if two people are showing up and they care about trying to create that. So this is a useful filter, I think. If you're talking and you name this into the space and the guy has zero interest in what you're saying, it's probably going to be hard to create that more secure kind of attachment with him, right? Like, I don't think it's going to come from unconsciousness. I think it's probably going to come from consciousness. So I would bring it into the space. I would be willing to use it as some kind of filter. And then I would maybe have like the 1 to 3 top behaviors where this thing shows up that you are practicing, either you or mutually. There's some kind of practice, right? So let me think. Possible avoidant behavior could be that after we've had some kind of intimacy, like we've gone on a weekend date, we've gone away for the weekend, then there can sometimes be, unconsciously or otherwise, a de-escalation of intimacy on behalf of the avoidant, where maybe you don't hear from them for quite a while, right? So like we had this like great weekend, but now it's Wednesday and I've not heard anything. Or maybe I texted them Sunday evening and I still haven't heard back 48 hours later, right? So one of the things that we could be paying attention to is if we have a more intimate experience, that we are going to agree that we will communicate the next day, right? And maybe it just is a minimum thing. Maybe it's, we're going to check in on text. It doesn't have to be, anything too onerous, but it's important. And then we notice, right? So a lot of this stuff you could notice kind of on the way in, like, is that available or not? Does the person, it's one thing to not be able to do it, right? Like I want to do it, but when I go to send that text, something else kind of, comes over my consciousness. But if I've got no interest in doing it, this is going to be hard to kind of, play together. So that's where I would start with like, what are the 1 or 3 behaviors? What would be another avoidant behavior? Could be that I make plans that have an impact on us, but I don't consult with you. So suddenly you find out, oh, I'm actually going on a big work trip, which means I'm not around for a while and I can't go to something that was important to you. And we didn't even talk about that. And you might have been fine to say, yeah, I get it. It's a big work trip. But you wanted to have a conversation about it and you wanted it to be acknowledged that this other thing that you're going to miss is that potentially that's important to me. And maybe you wanted some kind of negotiation, right? Maybe it would have felt good to say, okay, well, is there some other option to participate remotely? Or, okay, I get that I'm missing this, but I want you to know I'm absolutely ready to show up for the next one. And I get that this has sort of had a bit of a cost in your world. And so, as soon as I'm back from the trip, I actually want to take you, to the winery to kind of say sorry, but thanks for letting me go. right? Now that's a very different kind of conversation. It's basically like I'm willing to bring you in and to kind of like be on the inside of it. So maybe there's something like that you're sort of saying, hey, if I'm going to be in a relationship with you, I want the right to be consulted, not on everything all the time, but like on the stuff that feels big. Or if I sort of say to you, hey, I really would like to be consulted on this, or to have been consulted, that you're actually going to take that seriously. So where possible, I would try to get support. I would try to get mutual buy-in. And I would also try to simplify and focus on, 1, 2, or 3 things. Sometimes it might feel like it's not the specifics. It's more like the vibe, like I'm sort of thinking of, my own experiences of this dance, and where, from my sense, I was maybe a bit more in the vibe, and I felt like the other person was more in the sort of legalities, right? Sort of meaning, like, if I do the 1 or 2 things that we've said, that should be enough, rather than a sort of a little bit more of a generalized awareness. But that maybe also was a little bit overlaid with like a feeler thinker difference. Said differently, sometimes you can be right in the word of the law, but not really the spirit of the law. And I was a bit more on the spirit side. So yeah, there's maybe no perfect practice with this, but a bit like we were saying in the previous segment, I think there's good stuff that you can notice about this before you yourself become attached. So you might say, my aim is to not become attached until I think that there's at least enough in this sort of wheelhouse of possibility that we might have a mutual desire for secure attachment. Like, that's actually going to be the prerequisite for me thinking this is worth attaching. Right now, I know that sometimes we start to attach. It's not just because we think it. It's like, it's if we keep showing up and we keep relating, and maybe we're romantic or sexual with someone, that we're kind of opening up that bonding. But we're really going to try and slow that down and try and be pretty strategic about it. Right? If we know that the tendency is to get prematurely attached, to avoid unavailable men, then we want to take that period of attachment out the longest that it can be. Right? So you might even say to someone, yeah, I'm dating slowly. And I'm sort of trusting that the right person will want to get to know me slowly, that it's not going to move quickly into premature attachment. It's not going to move quickly into something that's too sexual too quickly. That doesn't really work for me. I actually want sort of like the bread and butter, right? I want the more day-to-dayness of it to unfold. All right. Going to scroll here for a few more questions. Thanks for all these comments. I appreciate your engagement. We are going to be drawing to a close here soon. If you have more questions about the Transformation Live group program, I have posted the link here. I will post it again. And if you want to avail of the deep discount, you need to use this code Labor Day. You put that in on the cart page, which I will also just post here for you as well. Check it out. And you'll notice that when you put that code in, it immediately changes the pricing structure. So check that out. Also, if you're here after the event, if you're here watching way after the event, feel free to reach out in case you want to get involved in the program. And there's another way of getting you in. So that's that. I also want to say, if you are more interested, but there's kind of questions that you don't want to explore here, that I will likely in the next 24 hours be running a Zoom information session and preview about this program. So keep an eye on email. If you're not on my email list, you're going to want to go to jackbutler.com. You can sign up to the free guide there. It's the checklist on the page. That's the quickest and easiest way to get on my mailing list, and is also, it takes you 5 minutes to read this guide, and it's a good way of thinking about, if you're in a connection right now and you're not sure, and you are a woman that dates men, if you're not sure the guy's showing up, this is just one way to check on his level of investment. All right, let me jump back up here. Good point, waking up. Been engaged 3 years. We're not together all the time. He travels. I've struggled to stay in the area, and my career has suffered. The other night, he tells me I am ungrateful. Am I? I've tried to set a date. I give up my career and learn a different trade. He acts sweet and nice when I have opportunities to go to work elsewhere, making great money. Then when I pass on them, he's a jerk. I should add, he's drunk every night to oblivion since I came around 5 years ago. What is wrong with me that I keep staying? Got it. Okay. Well, it seems like you have possibly some of your answers in here. Firstly, it sounds difficult, and it sounds like you've been trying a lot. And, I just want to say to people, any area of our life where we show up and try, like even if we're trying with an unsophisticated strategy, right, or we're trying ultimately in the direction that's not our best interest, you still tried, right? And I just think in life, we owe it to ourselves sometimes to acknowledge I tried really hard. I mean, gosh, I've had experience of trying to make relationship work and being like, I got to tell you, I tried so hard. Like no one can fault me in that, right? Maybe I was unskillful. Maybe it was a bad choice of compatibility. Maybe there was other life circumstances beyond my control, but it still takes a ton of energy to show up. So let's start there. Sounds like you've been trying to work hard. You've been willing to move. You've been willing to change your career. These are big things. Are you ungrateful? To me, that sounds like a sort of something that someone says, in an argument. I don't know if he really believes that. You're the authority on your gratitude, right? So you'll kind of know what you're really experiencing about that. It sounds here a bit like there's lots of sacrifices that you've made for the relationship, but maybe the relationship isn't actually supporting you, right? For whatever reason, whether that's the way the dynamic's set up, whether that's the drinking, whether that's, him, you, both of you. So I get why this is difficult, because it's almost like you've got a lot of sunk costs. Like you've been willing to move, shift your career. So you've invested a lot. And I'm sure at least a big part of you wants the payback on that, right? Like when we make big sacrifices, most of the time it's because we still want the result. Like we want, the relationship, or we want the thing to work out. So there's also the fallacy of sunk costs, right? Which it's a concept in economics, but it's basically, they are in the past and it's sort of now and going forward in the future. And so we don't get those costs back by continuing to keep putting money into the same project, right? In which, in this instance, the money would be, time, heart, presence, energy, love, right? So it could be that you've made some real sacrifices and sunk costs, and this actually, you're seeing it clearly, like this isn't going to be supportive for you, right? Maybe this person actually needs to go get sober, and maybe they need to go do that, and that's actually not your business. That's their business to sort out. What's wrong with you that you keep staying? I don't think there's something wrong with you. It just might be that you haven't fully, come to the point of your personal clarity and self-empowerment, right? And that's difficult for any of us. But what I'm hearing is you've put a ton in, and maybe you haven't got that coming back to you, and it's now time to actually call it and say, maybe for you actually need to get stabilized in your life again, right? Like what is it that you want to be doing? What is it that's the right track for you? What's the right career path and opportunities for you? And maybe you need to focus on that. And maybe actually you could, for now, you could actually maybe downshift the connection, possibly let it go, allow him some space to go focus on his sobriety if he wants to do that work, and for you to actually get restabilized in your life. And from that place, maybe you'll have better information about whether there's something here to pursue or not, right? So the meaning, if you were fully stabilized, you had a good footing beneath you, you were focused on the stuff that you need for your life, maybe from that place you would see, actually, does this add to my life, or is it actually detracting from it? And maybe he would have the maximum opportunity to see, does he want to sort the drinking thing out, right? I have not been in that. I've been in the path of sobriety, not sobriety from drugs and alcohol. Sobriety as a kind of a seeing clearly in life practice. There's a place that they overlap, but I don't pretend to know all the real work that goes into someone becoming sober. But I think often they have to decide that for themselves, right? So, what's wrong with you? It might be that you are in love with and have an attachment with a guy who can't fully show up for you right now. I don't think it makes you wrong. It just might be that that's hurting you. So I don't think this is time for self-blame. I think it's actually time for the piercing clarity of self-loving empowerment. And when we see something really clearly, like, oh, maybe there's something I'm enabling here, or maybe I'm afraid of letting this go because I put so much into it, or maybe I'm afraid of, will I get another relationship, right? That for any of us, gosh, and I've had this when I've gone through separation and divorce, like, will there be something better? That's a big claim to make to yourself, right? That there's something out there, particularly when you've been so invested in something. So, be compassionate with yourself. These things are rarely completely black and white, and often they come down to you getting enough space and support around your experience to actually know what is going on. So I would take some time for yourself. I don't think you're going to get clarity from the being in the connection. I think you need to tend to the fact that you're having a difficult time, and that's where you need to start with this. So yeah, I wish you ease with it. Normally there is a path through this, and normally, you know, I mean, it's interesting we're talking about sobriety, right? And with him, that might be a literal thing. Normally, the more that you can actually see it clearly, like, oh yeah, what's keeping me in this is not that this is a mutually supportive, loving connection. It's something else that's actually keeping me here, right? Like it's an unconscious contract, or it's a like a trauma bond, or it's an enabling thing, or there's something else that's actually part of that dominant energy. The more that you see that, normally the easier that it becomes for you. So a guy I dated for 2 months only and developed strong feelings ran away saying it got too intense, to then cyber stalk me daily for 1.5 years. He never texted me though, just cyber stalked. What to do? Well, firstly, I get why that would be confusing. The way that occurs to me right now, I'm obviously not on the inside of this, but it probably seems true to me that you guys have or had a connection, right? That he has been connected to you, but didn't want to either be in something that brought up that level of intensity, or, you know, wasn't really available for kind of like, quote, a real relationship. And so, but he didn't want to fully let it go, right? I don't think this is just true for men, but I, you know, probably know it more from the side of men, that there's actually a decent amount of women that you might like to be in some kind of connection with, right? Let's say you don't have a primary relationship, so you are, you know, you're sort of available. That there are a decent amount of women that you could have that kind of connection with. That it's not, you know, it's not a no, right? There's something about it, and it's not just, though this could be true, but it's not just that it's like, you know, it's just a sexual thing that can exist, but there's actually some kind of connection, right? There's some kind of, you know, we like each other, we get on, we have fun, you're attractive, I like being around you, but yet it doesn't cross over that threshold to like, and now I want to start to commit to a relationship with you. So there's quite a lot that can go on in that territory. Now, you can set your stall out and say, I don't want to be in that territory, right? So it's kind of like, you know, this is why we call it 0-1. You're either a 1, which means you are in for it doesn't mean you have to, you know, commit forever and a day, but you're in for, this is the thing that you're exploring with me, right? You're like, you're showing up for it, I'm showing up for it, let's see. Most of the time, that's what you want, right? So when it's not that, it gets difficult, because he has a genuine connection, which is probably, you know, why he's cyber stalking you, because he doesn't want to completely let you go, but he's not up for some kind of, you know, of the clarity and commitment. I don't think that there's anything to do in terms of trying to rekindle that connection, because I'm imagining that you might want a real relationship, if I'm right about that. So what you may need to do is actually complete the letting go from your side, which might be a kind of a blocking maneuver, right? It might be, you know, having him unfollow you on a platform, or it might be, you know, setting an Instagram to private so that it's actually just not available. It might be deleting his comments. It could be in a short communication, sort of letting him know, like, I actually don't want to have this kind of contact. So please, can you not, you know, follow and comment? It may just be cleaner to do that from your side, so that it's not really a kind of a negotiation. You know, both are possible. But I think where people get confused is sort of like, oh, is there a thing to do? Like, it means that maybe this is meant to be something. But I don't think cyber stalking is going to be suddenly blossoming into like a real connection. You know, it could be that it could just be true that if you guys were together, it's going to be, you know, too intense, right? Sometimes that's not one or other person's fault. It's just a property of the connection. So it might be that this would never have even worked for you, even if it's he was the one that kind of ran away from it and then has been doing this sort of like low-level stalking stuff. So, you know, obviously, if he's stalking you in a way that you don't feel safe, right, there might be some other thing, you know, that's a more like a law enforcement type thing. But I think oftentimes this can be cleared up by just actually clearing up your field and saying, I don't want to be in contact with this person, so let me remove those, you know, friendships, followings, etc., block on WhatsApp, etc., and it might take care of itself. So my question to you is, are you at that stage of seeing it that clearly, that there's not really something here to be pursued, that this is actually just something to close out? Let me know if there's some information I'm missing there. Got lots of yeses here. Thanks for that. Very empathetic and wise. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. I blocked him for 6 months to heal from the heartache, then unblocked him without him knowing, and he got back within 2 days only. Got it. He's a prison manager. Okay. Well, you should know about, blocking and unblocking. So it sounds like you need to keep him blocked, and maybe there's no reason to now unblock him. Like you did the hard work, you did the 6 months. Now you ran the test called Let's Unblock, and then he got back in touch within 2 days. So maybe it's actually for you to continue to that. I am curious. Sometimes in this situation, people never made the request to say, hey, I'm not going to be in touch, and I request that you don't. Sometimes I have people do a thing when we work in the group called a declaration of self-love, where it's like a clear statement of, this is what I'm looking for, this isn't this, I release it, I ask you to release it. You can't control what someone releases, right? Like if he wants to spend his time, sort of fantasizing about a pseudo relationship, like in a sense, that's his business, right? That's his difficulty. What you can control is the access, and are you able to move on in your life? And I know this stuff confuses people, right? Because they're like, wow, well, I blocked him for 6 whole months and then he's straight back in touch. Maybe there's a thing. If you really let that fantasy drop, typically that's where I've seen people have the best outcome, right? Sort of meaning if there's nothing, it's almost like if someone's trying to have a fight with you, but you just won't participate, that there's nothing really to be fought. But if you keep giving it some kind of like, oh, maybe, or he's confusing me, or I'm waiting for him to get clarity, or it needs 2 people to mutually agree this is done, that's sort of keeping it in place. Often there can be a unilateral clarity and declaration, like, actually, this isn't helping me. And by the way, right, like the loving maneuver for him could be to really let you go. Because if a guy is not going to show up for the committed relationship and he knows that that's what you want, then he's kind of getting in the way. But again, you don't get to control him. If we were coaching with him, we might say, hey, what's going on here? Like, do you really feel like your presence is helpful here? What are you fighting for? If you're saying that it was too intense and you needed something that was, slower burn, but he doesn't seem like he's saying that. He seems like he's basically checked out, but won't sort of fully let it go. And perhaps that's confusing to your psyche, and when we need to do the closing out from your side. All right, lovely people. It's time for lunch. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks also if you're watching after the event. Do check out my program and get in touch through the link there if you want to get more information on it. Keep your eye out if you're on my email list, because we will be doing a live preview session in the next 24 hours. I appreciate all the likes. Give it a like if you haven't. Thank you for all the comments and questions. They're always stimulating for me. So thanks for showing up. Thanks for being open, and thanks for your presence on my channel. And at some point, I may also do a little celebration here, because I did recently pass 50,000 subscribers and haven't marked that specifically. So keep an eye out for that. We may do a little celebration here at some point. All right. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate your presence here. You take it easy. Bye for now.